How many different tools do you use during your research? One to find papers, one to read them, a third to organize your notes, and maybe a ChatGPT to help you write? Before you know it, your literature review is spread over 6 different websites, and you don't even know anymore which tab holds the paper that you were looking for. But what if you could put all those steps together into one tool? Welcome to another episode of the PhD Toolkit, a series in which we test tools, software, and techniques that help make your life as a scientist just a little bit less of a struggle. Our goal is to answer the question, does this tool actually belong in your workflow? And today we're putting SciSpace to the test. It's one of the most feature-packed AI tools that we have reviewed so far, and it promises to help you find papers, read them, summarize, organize notes, and even improve your writing. But are all those features actually useful, or is it just promising too much? And by the end of this episode, we will score SciSpace by our 4 PhD Toolkit criteria. Now, before we dive in and test if SciSpace actually lives up to its promise, we have a quick note. This is not a sponsored episode, but what we do have is an affiliate link down in the description and some discount codes, and if you use them, you support our channel. Now, to test SciSpace, we're going to put it through an actual research workflow. Imagine you're starting a new project. First, you need to find the right papers, then you need to understand them and save the important ideas, and eventually turn everything into a manuscript. So let's see how SciSpace performs at those steps. Now, SciSpace has a lot more features than we're going to be showing in this video. It has things like AI agents for systematic literature reviews, evidence synthesis AI agents, and a whole range of more advanced research tools. But today we want to focus on the features that we think most researchers will be able to start using immediately and will have the most impact on your workflow. So we'll start where every research project starts, and that's with finding some papers. Now, if you just go to home here, you can see that it is an empty chat box. But here at the bottom, it already has some ideas about what you could ask it. So in this case, I want to search for papers, and I think I will just search PubMed. Yeah, and I'm gonna search it on the topic of one of my research projects during my PhD, which was EPD1. Whoa, the role of EPD1 in cholesterol. Listen. Okay, there we go. Let's see what it comes up with. Now, as you can see, it starts searching the PubMed literature. It has found 6 very relevant papers. For now, I'm quite happy with that. I do know that if you, for example, use the deep research function, you get a lot more papers. I've even gotten 60 plus papers in one go. But for now, I'm quite happy with just a more focused result of EP1 papers, including mine. How nice. You can now see here the papers that it has found and the abstract immediately, which really helps you, of course, figure out which paper is the most important. And save them to a collection or a library that you also see here on the side of my library. Now, I already have one of EPD1 that is also connected to my Sotero library, so I'm going to add it to that. I can also here at the top add some more things, like for example, I want a very short summary, too long didn't read, about each of the papers so that I can immediately see what they're about. I want to have some information about the method that they used because I'm looking for something specific. All of these things can be added here to the table so that you can decide which papers are important, and then you can save them to your library via this button here. Now, what is also really cool is that if you find a certain paper interesting and you want to easily get access to the PDF of it, you can connect to your institute's library and it will connect to it. Now, then you do need to log in, of course, to your institute, but it will automatically then find the PDFs for you and link to them. Another option is that you connect it to your Sotero library. So if you, for example, go here to the paper, download it, add it to your Sotero reference manager, of course, the best reference manager there is out there, then you can connect your reference manager Sotero to the library here and automatically get the PDFs as well. And why you want the PDFs available here is because then you can start doing something very, very powerful, which is chatting with PDF. And this is not the simple normal chatting with PDF. It actually goes a bit further Now, of course, here in the library, you also get information about all the papers, which is really nice. If this is just a Zotero library and you want to see which paper you need to use for something, that is already really powerful. But if I now click on it here, I go into the paper and I can chat. Now I can ask it here the standard questions, of course. We've seen that with more chat PDF functions. But what is also really cool is that you can, while you're reading it, click on a specific section that you really like, and for example, ask it to summarize it. Then it will give a little summary here on the side. And what you can then do, after we wait a moment, of course, for it to be summarized, you can save it to your notebook. You can make different notebooks on different topics. And this is basically your notes on this specific paper. And if you, for example, ask it to generate a summary of this paper, you can also add that to your notes very quickly. You can also highlight a section, or you can add it directly to a notebook. Now it has made this summary here with references to specific sections of the paper where you find certain things. And like this, you can really quickly check if you actually agree, of course, with what the summary is. And I think that is one of the key features of this notebook as well, that you then immediately can find back where you found certain things and can double check the information in the actual paper. Here we have it. So you can now, for example, see that it says that it got this statement from this section of the paper. And it says something about the fructose diet here, which is indeed true, where it says something about the fructose diet. So that's really cool. I would always, of course, double check and make sure that you also read the original paper. What is also really fun that you can do if you check it out right here is that you can have the paper explained to you in podcast form. Now, I do have to say that this is a feature that is locked behind Pro, but it is still pretty cool, especially if you are somebody who likes to consume knowledge in a different way, or if you have a car drive to do and you want to have a paper explained to you. Okay, so finding papers and understanding them is one thing, but eventually you also have to explain your own science. And that is, of course, way harder than explaining somebody else's science. Now, SciSpace does have a feature for this. So let's take a little bit of a look at this. First, we need to get back to home. I want to generate a diagram on the cholesterol uptake process, because that could be really useful for me, for example, for presentations and things like that, just horizontal or vertical panels, and if needed, show steps in sequence. Really nice that SciSpace already gives you a prompt to use here. Let's let it generate that. Now, I have tried this feature in the past, and one major comment I have with this feature is that it hasn't always been 100% scientifically correct. And that I personally find a major downside, of course, because that means that the figure as is cannot really be used. So I would always caution with this feature. But what I do think it can be used for is some inspiration, because it can be really hard to figure out how to explain a certain process in a nice overview way. So if you then use this image as inspiration and create your own, that could really work. But let's see what it actually comes up with this time, and if this is scientifically correct. Okay, let's see. I like the overview. It is quite clear. It is something that you could find in a paper. Adipose protein, LDR receptor. This is looking quite nice. It also has here some information about the pH. I already like this better than I did last time. And the LDL receptor is recycled back to the surface. Yeah, see here is where I am, that is not 100% correct, because this LDL receptor doesn't just magically boom go back to the LDL to the cell surface. That is, of course, vesicle transport that then has to go back. But overall, it's not bad, and I would say that this is definitely something that you could use as inspiration for your own work. But I would always make sure that you know what you're talking about, and make sure that it is scientifically correct, and make sure that you can fix mistakes like this. So I am not 100% convinced about this feature. I would say it is more of a inspiration finding feature until they can make sure that also small things like this are correct. I do like the colors it came up with and the overview and the clear steps. I do feel like there's a lot you can take out of this figure that can really help. It starts out really well, but it sort of loses it for me here. Now, the final hurdle of any research workflow is, of course, the writing. And it has two different ways that it can help you write. And the first way it can help you is with this AI writer here. And this basically sends you to an empty notebook where it wants to help you write. And what it can do is, for example, if you're writing about a certain protein, it can say if you start an introduction for cholesterol metabolism, you already saw a little bit what it wants to do their metabolism. If you wait a second, it suggests a way to end your sentence, which can be really nice if you are somebody who suffers from writing block a little bit, where you will get maybe 100 words a day on a page, but you keep overthinking how to write a perfect sentence. And your first version really doesn't need to be perfect. It's later in an editing round where it becomes more and more important to have good writing. So this can help certain people, but it's definitely not for everybody. And I would also really be hesitant to always follow the guidance of the AI. And if you just click yes, yes, yes multiple times, it will write a text that is perfectly fine but goes absolutely nowhere. So you as a scientist really need to be in charge of the direction of the text and make sure that it actually says what you are trying to say. So it's definitely a tool, and I wouldn't just go with everything that the AI is suggesting here. But it can be useful. I would suggest trying it out and see if it works for you. Now, another way that this platform can help you write is via here home and then review my writing, and then it will review some content that you share. Now, let me look up a paper that I have written and give it the abstract of that. That's probably a really bad idea, because if you ever look back at writing that you have already submitted and you find mistakes, that is not good. So I wouldn't recommend doing this with something that is already published. But in this case, for this trial, I'm gonna do this for you. Okay, so what is really interesting is that it looks at different improvement factors. Already from the get-go, it knows to look at this. So it looks at scientific accuracy and clarity, writing quality and flow, sentence structure, conciseness, technical terminology consistency. So it checks the scientific literature and makes sure that things are actually correct, which I find really, really interesting. Okay. So it gives me a couple of things that I could have improved on this abstract if it wasn't already published. Less well studied, remains poorly characterized, maybe, yes. Very interesting. So it definitely gives some improvements on the text. What I hate already right off the bat is these AI generated marks. But otherwise, I don't hate the suggestions it gives. And it could be useful, especially since it does something differently than just ChatGPT improving the text, right? It really gives you also an explanation of why something could be better and how to do that. Yes. So, an interesting thing to look at if you have something that is written that you want to have some feedback on. Now, would we use this? Yes. Would the reviewer too still hate the manuscript? Absolutely. But I do think this is definitely something different than you get from other AI tools. So that makes it pretty cool. Now that is the complete workflow, from finding papers all the way to writing your final literature review or paper manuscript. And now the question, of course, is, does SciSpace really do all these things well enough to fit in your workflow? Now, after testing all of these features, we already have a pretty good idea of where SciSpace is going to end up on our leaderboard. But there's still a couple of criteria that can change this. The first and probably most important is research impact. Now here, it isn't about how many different features a tool has, but it's about if this tool actually helps you with your research workflow. And I think SciSpace actually does a pretty good job. The review the literature function really helps you find literature in a different way than just a PubMed or a Google search. And the AI summaries help you figure out which papers are actually the most important pretty quickly. Then you can continue reading the paper and using chat with PDF and your note-taking functions to save important information about these papers. Now, not every feature impresses equally. For example, the diagram feature, especially if you use it for something novel that isn't as well established in research, tends to make some mistakes, and you need to, as a scientist, be pretty critical on this. But overall, with all the different features that SciSpace have, including the ones that we didn't even get to in this episode, we think SciSpace does a pretty good job at supporting researchers and making them work more efficiently. So for research impact, we're gonna give them 5 stars. Now our second criteria is ease of use. This is all about how easy a tool is to use and that it isn't going to take you weeks to figure out different functions and things like that. Now considering how many different features SciSpace have, we were pleasantly surprised by the core features and how easy to use they are. Now we do have to say that if you dive a bit deeper and want to, for example, start using the AI agents, while they are really powerful, they do require a little bit more time to figure out which one is actually the right one, because there's just so many of them. But for the core features, the platform is very intuitive and really guides you step by step through this process. And importantly, you don't need to learn everything from day one. You can start with the core features and then build slowly with what you need and take out of the platform what you want. So we're gonna give ease of use 4 out of 5 stars, just because it can get a little bit overwhelming when you look at all those different features that SciSpace has. Now our third criterion is value for money. Now notice that we don't just look at price, because a tool can be a little bit more expensive if it actually saves you a lot of time and effort in your actual research. SciSpace does offer a free version in which you can use the literature search already and the chat with PDF function, which is pretty decent to at least try out the tool and figure out if this really works for you. Now, if you want to use the more advanced features, the agents and all these things, it does become quite limited on the free version. So the paid version unlocks the more advanced features, and whether or not this is worth it is really dependent on how much you would use this tool in your daily workflow. If you're regularly reading papers, writing literature reviews or manuscripts, then it might be worth it, just based on the amount of time that it can save. But if you just occasionally read a paper or do a literature search, then the free version might actually already be enough for you. So value for money, we give it 4 out of 5 stars. Now our final criteria is workflow integration. And this is probably our favorite criteria, because after reviewing so many tools, we have learned that scientists rarely just use one tool in their workflow. And the real question is if a tool actually naturally fits into a workflow and actually makes your life easier. And this is, I think, where SciSpace really impressed us. Because instead of just solving one problem and doing one specific function, SciSpace has all these different features that can help you with different steps of the process, all in one tool. It almost supports the entire process, from finding papers, reading them, saving information to them, to writing, but also a little bit making figures, or at least getting inspiration for figures, without constantly switching to different platforms, which also means fewer opportunities to accidentally close the wrong tab. Now that doesn't mean that you will stop using every other tool, because there's definitely also other AI tools that do other cool things. And we're definitely recommending also making sure that you bring your own scientific judgment to the table as a scientist. But SciSpace does bring together a lot of different features that can be very valuable for researchers. So for workflow, we give it 5 out of 5 stars. So, would we actually recommend SciSpace? Well, yes. No tool was perfect, of course, and there were some features that were stronger than others, and there's also a lot of different features that we didn't even get into. But for example, the generation of the figures left us wanting a little bit more scientific accuracy. But the other features were pretty cool. What impressed us most wasn't just one single feature, it was actually this entire workflow all together in one tool. So would we recommend SciSpace to a new PhD student? Yes, but only after we make them install Zotero. Seriously, install Zotero. So where does SciSpace rank on our leaderboard? Where are we putting SciSpace on our leaderboard? Well, we're putting SciSpace in the highest tier, just because it has so many different features. It's one of the most complete research platforms that we have tested so far. And the combination of all these different features is really powerful. And if after watching this review you want to give SciSpace a try, you'll find our affiliate link and some exclusive discount codes for both the Pro and Advanced plan in our description. And using these links will help you support our channel for no additional cost to you. And we really appreciate it. So we think SciSpace definitely deserves a place in your PhD toolkit. Of course, no single tool is perfect for every researcher and every project. That's why we started this series, the PhD Toolkit. Our goal is to test research tools so that you don't have to, helping you build a toolkit that actually helps you with your research. So hopefully you can spend a little bit less time fighting software and a little bit more time fighting reviewer too. If you're still looking for the right tools for in your workflow, definitely check out our other PhD Toolkit episodes. We have already tested tools like Cite, Visly, Jenny. Now thank you so much for watching. Next time we'll put another tool through exactly the same test to see whether it deserves a place in your PhD Toolkit. Bye!